The Great Lakes can have a snapping effect. When we find that our lives are too busy or stressful, or perhaps too routine and underwhelming, we often find ourselves wandering to the water's edge. It's here where the awesome power of a November wave crashing over a breakwater can remind us that we and our agendas are often much smaller than we realize. It's here where a spring sunset, as seen from the top of a sand dune, can help put into perspective just how incredible and privileged our front row seats to life on Earth really are. These waters have a way of snapping us back into place. But what then do we do when they don't? What happens when the cause of our addled state has no explanation? Perhaps, instead of turning to the overwhelming size and brute force of the lakes, we find ourselves needing some fine-tuning, some recalibration. Hello, and welcome, my freshwater friends, to episode 23 of the About the Water podcast, an exploration of high strangeness on and around the Great Lakes. Today we depart the northwestern end of Lake Ontario and travel along the Niagara River to Niagara Falls themselves. Here, we'll find ourselves looking for an explanation to a problem that we didn't know we had, only to be presented with a solution that is even less explainable than the problem, as even our own reflections seem lost as they wander about the water. Episode 23, Recalibrating. Terry's wife had noticed. It started about a month ago. She couldn't explain how, but Terry just seemed different. Terry's employer had noticed. The confident and take-charge leader seemed out of place. Several coworkers had noted that his words seemed unusually out of sync with what his mouth was saying, almost as if he was voice dubbing his own performance in a movie. Terry's friends noticed. There was something off about him. Terry looked like Terry, yeah. He sounded like Terry. But for lack of a better description, he wasn't Terry. It felt like he was an imposter. And Terry's newborn twin sons had noticed. The two loving, clingy, and cuddly infants had taken to recoiling from him, beginning to cry each time he tried to hold them. They seemed afraid. The only person who didn't seem to notice that there was an issue with Terry was Terry. He felt fine. Great, actually. His healthy habits and regular checkups had him physically feeling tip-top. He loved his job, his commute was short, his wife was his best friend, his kids were beautiful, and his small handful of close friends were like brothers to him. He didn't drink, didn't smoke, never touched any kind of drugs, he wasn't on any medication, and lately, the only element of his life that felt un-Terry-like was his rising anger, feeling like he was being gaslit about his own well-being. At the suggestion of his nurse wife, he did visit a neurologist and even completed an MRI, both of which turned out to be nothing more than a waste of time and money. The electric tea kettle clicked off, and Terry's wife poured him a cup of Earl Grey, his weekend go-to. "I don't know, I can't explain it," his wife told him. "But, Terry, you're scaring everyone." Terry leaned back on the kitchen counter stool and took a deep, patient breath. "I'm scaring everyone how? Have I been short-tempered?" His wife thought for a moment and replied as if confused herself. "No." Terry followed that up by asking, have I been unpleasant? Have I done anything wrong? Have I said anything wrong?" His wife looked at the floor for about a minute, and then looking up to answer him with 3 additional and well-thought-out no's, her eyes suddenly went wide. She took a step back, dropping her coffee cup on the floor. "Terry, you're not him. Who are you? Where is Terry?" I know you're not him." With confused tears beginning to fill his own eyes, Terry stood up to take his wife by the hand. "Honey, you're scaring me. What is the matter?" he asked. Never once breaking eye contact, his wife stepped backwards to the rack where their car keys hung. "Terry, I'm sorry. The kids and I, we have to go away just for the weekend." With an exacerbated groan, Terry grabbed his hoodie. "Don't bother," he said. "See you on Monday." "Well, everybody's got their special place. This one's mine," Terry explained to his empty passenger seat as he pulled the car into the hotel parking lot. He stared at his cell phone in the center console, wanting nothing more than to call his wife. But after all that had happened, and what just happened, he just didn't know what to do. And so he went inside and booked a room for the next 2 nights. His hotel was smack dab in the middle of the touristy part of the city of Niagara Falls, Ontario, and he chose it very deliberately. It made for good people watching. It always made Terry feel like he was on vacation, even though from here he could practically see the skyline of his hometown of Mississauga, which was only about an hour away. But most of all, Terry loved this place because, as a starting point for a leisurely stroll to the falls, it made for an incredible contrast as the artificial world gave way to that raw natural might of 750,000 gallons of water falling 18 stories every second. Looking at the sights on either side of the famous street, Clifton Hill, always put a smile on Terry's face. It was like being at a carnival or fair. The setting sun gave the area a synthetic sort of orange hue, as if it were being lit by stage lights. Seeing a young boy tug at the arm of a weary dad, dragging him towards a huge blinking arcade, just made Terry want to be home. He missed his family. Forcing the thought out of his mind and focusing on his surroundings, Terry laughed at the giant purple King Kong, which was standing triumphantly on top of a toppled Empire State Building. A clattering roller coaster car came flying out of the top of Frankenstein's castle. "It's so cheesy and so awesome," Terry said to himself as he took it all in. The aroma of go-kart gasoline lingered in the air, sweetened by the subtle notes of soft-serve ice cream, French fries, and hot coffee. Hot coffee, which gave Terry an idea. "Ooh, now that sounds like just the thing," Terry said out loud, realizing that he was only a few steps from a corner Tim Hortons. As he approached the front door, he patted his back jean pocket to make sure he still had his wallet. He lowered his hood and glanced through the window to see how long the line was. And as he did, Terry stopped. He stood, frozen in place, as he watched his own reflection in the window. A reflection which was just now walking into view as it patted its back pocket to check for its wallet. Then lowering its hood, it looked into the window, only to then freeze in place. Terry stepped back, and a grin started to form on his face. "Clever, you got me." He told himself immediately that it must be some kind of a trick, recording and delayed projection, a touristy gimmick, that kind of thing. But, wait, on a Timmy's? Yeah, this is a weird strip. They do something like that, right? Yeah, okay. With a deep breath, he crossed to the other side of Clifton Hill, and as Terry continued to walk, he could hear someone calling out, "Hey man, hey, guy, hey." Not realizing the voice was calling for him, Terry didn't think twice until he felt a hand tap on his shoulder. "Hey man, how did you do that? That was awesome." The young man, probably in his late teens, had apparently noticed the anomaly in the window. "Man, do you work for one of these places or something?" he asked Terry while pointing around. No, I don't," Terry replied. "Excuse me." As Terry began to walk away, he noticed the young man's amused smile. "Dude, what?" as he looked through the curved window of a nearby brewery. Terry turned around to look. The young man's reflection was there. Terry's wasn't. Yet. "Oh, here you come, bro," the young man said, and although the pair was completely motionless, They watched as Terry's shadow walked into view, responding to an invisible tap on the shoulder, shaking his head no, and then joining the pair in real time. Seeing that the young man was now bringing his phone up to record, Terry nervously slapped it out of his hand and onto the ground. "Is this a joke? What is this?" Terry demanded of the young man. With an angry protest, the man bent over to pick it up, at which point Terry ran. Fast. Half a block away was Falls Avenue, an area in which the noises and blinking lights of Clifton Hill ended, and the serene tree-lined green space began. Terry ran at full speed parallel to Falls Avenue. Looking up, he could see the mist rising from Horseshoe Falls, which was still nearly a mile away. Hearing a siren approaching behind him, Terry was certain someone called the police. But it wasn't a police siren. Looking over his shoulder, he was relieved to see that it was an ambulance.
"Sir, you're having a medical emergency. Please stop. Sir, we are here to help."
Terry was so confused and so scared that he just decided to stop. He walked briskly towards the ambulance, waving his arms in the air and explaining to them that he felt fine. The brightness of the vehicle's blinking lights, set against a twilight sky, revealed the silhouettes of two large men. They hopped out of the unmarked ambulance and approached Terry. "How long?" an unseen female voice asked. One of the two men replied in a deep, deep tone, 7 seconds, ma'am." The two men suddenly grabbed Terry, holding him in place, while a woman in a dull white lab coat walked around from the side of the vehicle. "Wow," she said to Terry. 7 seconds. You've been somewhere you shouldn't have been, you naughty, naughty boy." Without looking up, she asked Terry, "So tell us, who do you work for and where do you work?" "What?" Terry replied. What is all this?" The woman then asked again, more sternly, "Who do you work for and where do you work?" Terry tried to pull himself free of the men's grasp, only able to blurt out the phrase, "Law firm." The woman then looked up with an unamused expression. "Wait, law firm?" she asked. "You work at a law firm?" Terry noticed the large man to his right becoming visibly frustrated, as he asked, "Have you seen something? Have you been contacted?" He tightened his grip, as if trying to squeeze an answer out of Terry. "What is all this?" Terry replied. "What is 7 seconds what? What is this?" Seemingly noticing Terry's distress and bewilderment, the woman then tapped the shoulder of the large man. His grasp on Terry relaxed as she spoke. "We're wasting our time here. This is just a mix-up." With an annoyed sigh, the woman then removed an orange handheld device from her lab coat pocket. With the grip of the two men relaxing even more, the woman held the device against Terry's leg and said a single word, "Recalibrating." The device then emitted a dull beeping noise and caused Terry no physical sensation whatsoever. The two men abruptly let him go, and the trio silently got back into the ambulance and left without another word. Terry sat down on the grass, watching the vehicle disappear down Falls Avenue. And after listening to the distant rumble of the falls for what he guessed was about half an hour, Terry decided to go back the way he came. Hopefully, he could find the young man he had met earlier and see if compensation was needed for his cell phone. But Terry never did see him again. Outside of the usual blinking lights and odd sights of Clifton Hill, the only thing Terry saw was his own reflection, convex in one window, concave in another, eagerly keeping time with Terry as he rushed back to his car, never once falling out of sync, perfectly calibrated. I'm very curious to know what your thoughts are on what in the world this was. All I can do on my end, for starters, is to tell you what it was not. The experience was not harmful. Actually, to the contrary, it was seemingly beneficial. When Terry went home immediately after, He said his wife rushed up to him with a big hug. In her own words, I knew instantly that he was himself again, that my husband had returned. And Terry's friends, his boss, even his kids, they all seemed to notice the difference, and life went back to normal. We also know that Terry, seeing his own reflections in the window delayed, was not some kind of delayed projection or tourist gimmick. The two locations on Clifton Hill in which he saw those reflections were the Tim Hortons and the window of the Niagara Brewing Company. I reached out to both, of course, and they assured me that nothing like that has ever existed at their establishments, or to any of their knowledge anywhere in the area. But they did admit it sounded kind of cool. Also, we can safely assume that based on his excellent medical state, his lack of substance abuse, and his confirmation that what he was seeing was real by another person, that this ordeal was not some kind of hallucination on Terry's part. And as obvious as this may sound, we think can assume that the ambulance crew is not an actual ambulance crew. An EMT friend of mine did say that a Canadian ambulance would never be unmarked. Of course, they want you to know what they are. When I asked that friend this question over video chat, he, at that point, got real close to the camera, and he said, "See, it's a secret government agency. I know it." But I just have trouble believing that. A piece of high-tech and under-the-radar gear would not be painted bright orange. Besides the fact that it would draw all kinds of unwanted attention, government agencies are known for their black-on-black attire, and something bright orange would be a blatant fashion faux pas. So, now that we've ruled out the unlikely, it's time for some good old-fashioned speculation. Maybe your guess is similar to mine in that this was some way related to multiverse theory or simulation theory. Maybe Terry had slipped halfway through a crack in our universe and got stuck, so to speak. Those close to him would notice a difference, as a different Terry was trying to occupy this world. And I know it sounds silly, but if that is the case, then those friends and family were 100% correct. Terry was literally not himself. Or maybe, and I can't believe I'm saying that this is the more sane theory, maybe the program that we all lived in glitched. The CPU got bogged down, and the program that is Terry's entire existence simply fell out of sync with the rest of the program. And based on those strange details that the ambulance crew provided to the lab coat woman, we can assume that his existence was off by 7 seconds. And in either case, in either one of these theories, the orange recalibrating device simply fixed the glitch. And as fun as those theories might be, I think I can offer you a far more compelling one by going back to the secret government agency idea. I asked Terry to describe the attire of the two large men who got out of the ambulance who held him, and he said in terms of what they were wearing, he can't remember anything specific. I admit to leading the witness a bit in this case when I asked him if they were dressed in black suits, to which Terry replied no, and he thought that, while he can't remember, he would remember something like that. Once Terry figured out what I was suggesting, he simply texted me back with, "Men in black? Really?" And my reply to him, after rethinking this whole thing, was a confident and emphatic, "Maybe?" The UFO buffs among us are undoubtedly familiar with the very well-known Men in Black sighting in Niagara Falls, Ontario, back in 2008. Long story short, a hotel manager named Shane reportedly witnessed a strange triangular craft near his hotel. And shortly after that, a security camera caught two large men dressed in the classic MIB black suits with old-timey hats entering through the lobby doors. The video is widely circulated if you'd like to see it. And while Shane wasn't present at the time that they arrived, the two men did interrogate other employees who reported being absolutely terrified, saying that it was like they could read their thoughts. When I tried to confirm the location of the hotel, the results became, well, uncalibrated. Several sources have the event occurring at the Days Inn, very near the Horseshoe Falls, which would be about a mile from where Terry's events took place. And when I went back online and reviewed the security camera footage, however, one can clearly see in the video that the entryway carpet features a large S surrounded by a laurel, unmistakably the logo for Sheraton hotels. After some further investigating, I did come across some conflicting reports saying that the event indeed happened at a Sheraton hotel in the Fallsview neighborhood. Cross-checking with a deep dive using AI, which I absolutely try not to do on this show, the event was reported to indeed take place at a Sheraton, and after confirming through several sources, there was also a concrete address provided, 5875 Falls Avenue. AI, strangely enough, went on to explain, though, that the events took place about 15 minutes away from where Terry had reported his ordeal. And unlike anything I've ever seen, the answer went so far as to tell me that my assumption was impossible. Because of the proximity, it was incorrect. And admittedly, when I got this answer, it was late at night, and I think it was storming, so I was in full-blown X-Files mode, convinced that the government agency was trying to manipulate the answer to throw me off track. And while at face value that sounds ridiculous, I'm sure you picked up on it when the ambulance crew asked Terry where he worked and who he worked for, following that up with, "Have you seen anything?" So I decided to go old-fashioned and just look up the address. And indeed, there was and is a Sheraton hotel at 5875 Falls Avenue in Niagara Falls, Ontario. But it's not near Horseshoe Falls. To be specific, it's at the corner of Fallsview Avenue and Clifton Hill. The men in black, recorded on that legendary piece of security camera footage, were recorded less than 300 feet away from the exact point where Terry was recalibrated. And with that, thank you sincerely for listening. In case you can't tell, I have an absolute blast doing this show, so thank you hugely for your support. Here's hoping that your own reflections remain calibrated, and here's hoping that on viewing those reflections, that they're as grand, beautiful, and enduring as our Great Lakes. I'll see you about the water.